Hello. Vamos a comenzar.
Let's make a start. If I could please request everyone to take their places. I hope you can hear, everyone can hear. Please take your seats.
Antes de comenzar,
Before we begin,
the translation is Arabic is channel 25, Spanish is 8, and English is 2. Okay? Bueno,
all right. We are trying to get some order here for event about women, and we all listen to the man. But anyway, good evening, everyone. There are a number of initiatives that exist about the conflict in Palestine. However, we wanted to adopt a different focus, and that is from a female point of view. I think we are all well aware, and we all know and admire the many Palestine women, their determination, their work in a context that is marked by a violation of human rights, by occupation, and with a lack of perspectives for the future, at least at the moment. I think the women of Palestine are at the front lines of the conflict. They are the women who are making a difference. They are committed to the cause, and they are playing a very important role in their society. They continue to sacrifice themselves so that their children can have a better future and a free nation. I think they are bearing the entire suffering of all their people. They are highly committed and involved in social life and the fight, and they are a key element in social cohesion in their country. I think we need to show them the necessary respect. The situation is very complicated. They have our full support, and I would like to conclude by saying that these women are key. They are the cornerstone of achieving a free Palestine, of achieving a more just Palestine society, and for Palestine to have their own free country. The rise of the alt-right is very complicated for all of us, and especially for countries that are facing such situations. We've seen that in Germany, the alt-right has now entered the Bundestag again. We've seen this in France, in the Netherlands. I think things are becoming very complicated and very difficult. Therefore, this conference is a moment for us to create visibility for these causes, these issues, and especially to shine a light on the women who are a shining example of how we can struggle and fight for our causes. Nothing else from my end, and thank you very much. Welcome here, and I hand over to my colleague.
Bueno, buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be very brief because I think what we are here for is to listen to our guest speakers. It's very important for us to have been able to organize this conference, and I thank you for being here. At the end of the year, end of the day, you are the sign of the solidarity and support to the Palestine resistance. At the moment, this resistance is being made invisible. The occupation by Israel is something that is being made invisible. Israel is a country that uses its military to defend itself. It is a nuclear country, a nuclear armed state that has over 300 nuclear warheads. It enjoys the support of the United States. And at the moment, the media does not talk about Palestine. We are talking about a crisis in the Korean Peninsula. All major media have, in a way, forgotten to criticize or at least talk about why Israel is not being looked at as an aggressive nuclear power. At the moment, the resistance being put up by an entire nation, entire population that has been existing for multiple decades now is being pushed out. They have been subjected to armed threats, illegal occupation, which violates all international law. From the GUE-NGL group here in the European Parliament, we would like to support this cause because we share their cause. We would also like to fight against this hiding of the role of Palestine's women. There are many external factors as well as internal factors that want to relegate women to other parts of society and social life. The Palestinian society has shown us that they are at the vanguard of the fight in protecting the people of Palestine. So once again, thank you very much for being here. And I would like to appeal to all of you to continue to support the fight put up by this dignified nation for their freedom. It's not a question of generosity, it's not a question of NGOs, of donations, but it's about accompanying this struggle for a free state. This is a country that is being subjected to apartheid, to aggression, and to neo-colonial oppression. I would like to end here, and I would now like to hand over to someone else who has contributed significantly to the meeting we have here today, and that's Manu. Manu, over to you.
Bueno, está bien eso de irse para la izquierda.
I think you have to start by saying I'm going to be brief. I always maybe say that, but I never really managed to be brief. But anyway, now let me just explain how we have arrived to the conference today. It's not been easy. We decided to hold this event in June, July 2015. And we've been working for 2 years now to make this happen. I am speaking on behalf of UNADICUM, and UNADICUM does not recognize Israel as a country. This is a colonialist, genocidal, occupying force in Palestine. So I'm not going to talk about Israel at all. We don't recognize Israel as a nation. The Zionist entity has many ways of whitewashing their actions. So, in a way, they do whitewash what they're doing, and they present themselves as a modern, civilized society, and they try and project Palestine as something completely different, some horrible people, misogynists, homophobes, and hundreds of other things. Palestine is a misogynistic society, but well, that maybe applies to Spain and France and many other countries as well. I think patriarchy is well and alive in many parts of the world. But I don't think we can believe that women are invisible in this Palestinian society and don't have a role. So in 2015, I was in my brother Basir's house. He's here somewhere. I was in the home of my brother Basir Tamimi. His wife Nariman already had a ticket to come, but yesterday her son was shot and therefore she could not come. And so we saw that these are women playing very important roles. They're at the front line of the resistance against the colonial occupation, and these colonialists are the most violent and most aggressive of the Zionist state. They have killed Nariman's brother. Yesterday they shot her son. Thankfully, he is still alive. But Nariman has continued to be part of this struggle in spite of her brother's death, to basically be clear that who has killed her brother. In fact, these are people who, according to the European Union, are the most moral military and the only democracy in the Middle East. We have seen how Ahed, who is here with us today, has grown up while throwing stones and just putting up a resistance to these military forces, these occupiers. Recently, we've seen how she has put her foot against a soldier while he was trying to shoot her mother, but the soldier did shoot a 29-year-old a protester there. And this is not just a joke, there's not posturing, but this is in fact people risking their lives to put up a resistance, to fight for freedom. So when we decided to set up this event, I firstly spoke to Angela, and I said, well, Angela, what do you think within the Izquierda Unida group, the GUE, what about doing this event on Palestine? And Angela said, yes, that's a great idea, but it's not going to be very easy. So it's been a long process for us to come here today. And then we spoke to Sahar. Sahar is sitting next to Ahed. She's the director of Adamir. And she's here not only here in her capacity as the director of Adamir, which is the organization of reference when it comes to human rights in Palestine, but in fact she's here because she's also the lawyer of Khaled Jarrar, a member of the Palestine Legislative Council, who at the moment has been kidnapped practically and is suffering administrative detention, something that Israel uses frequently. Khalida is the leader of the Palestine left. She is the leader of the Palestine left in this very moment, because Ahmad Sada is in prison since 2003, I think. So we have been trying to do what we can to make sure that Khalida can actually come out of prison. And that's when we actually began this entire process, because we wanted Khalida to be here with us. But unfortunately, Khalida cannot be with us here today because they have put her back into prison. Israel knows who they are dealing with. They know who they're attacking, and they are trying to dismantle an organization that is in fact projecting an egalitarian, socialist, secular image of the Palestine nation. And these are the people Israel is attacking. In this context, they basically detained Khalida. They've kidnapped her, put her under administrative detention, and 11 other colleagues of hers from the PLC have also been detained. So the first thing I would like to request you, but in fact I'm not going to request, I'm just going to assume that that's going to happen. We are going to request, or rather I hope that the European Parliament, a representation of the people and the citizens of the EU, I hope that they will reach out to Israel and tell them that they are in fact kidnapping people who represent the government of Palestine. We want to shine a light and focus on Khalida, on Marwan Marghuti, on Ahmad Sadat, on so many comrades who have been kidnapped by Israel. Some of them are just facing lifelong sentences. So we want to look at these major leaders, but in fact almost 7,000 people are in prison today. Many of them are just charged with something and they end up in administrative detention. So we are asking for the release of all of these prisoners, and with a major focus on Khalida Jafar and Khitar Safin. We also have a living legend with us here today, a living legend of the Palestine resistance. Those of us who come from the left, we would have liked to meet Lenin or Che Guevara, and we have the great honor to have someone here with us who we can call the Che Guevara of Palestine. And here we're talking about Leila Khaled.
No voy a cometer la grosería de explicaros quién es Leila.
I am not going to even try and explain who Leila Khaled is. I think that would not be right. I said I'd be brief, so I won't go on for much longer. But I would like to ask for a bit of your patience. But I'm just going to assume that that's what we're going to ask for. We're going to ask for release of all political prisoners, to also impose sanctions against this occupying power, and your applause, I think, shows that this is what you want as well. Now, here I have some special mentions that I would like to go through. Now, to see the fact that this room, which is anything but small, is completely full, it's a great pleasure really to see that. So I'm not going to be able to thank each one of you personally, but there are some people I would like to mention in person. Firstly, I'd like to thank all the colleagues who have made this possible. We can say whatever we want here, but if we did not have the support of MEPs like Javier Couso and Angela Baina, this would not have been possible. We would have not been here today. We could have talked about anything we wanted, but it would have been impossible for us to be here today. Special thanks also go out to Marta Mosquera, a dear colleague. She has shown infinite patience, and we have also really made her work even while she was on vacation, so thank you so much. Another special mention for all the different Jewish anti-Zionist comrades who are here today. Their support means the world to us. Now, this is a personal one, but I would like to thank my comrade Rafat, a colleague of mine who is here. He has really fought hard to be here, and he is someone who was released 20 years ago from prison, and I have no idea how he's managed to make it here today, but thank you so much for being here. I would also like to thank Michel Colomb. He's here somewhere, right there, and he is someone who has given us constant support. And after I'm done with my mentions, I would like to give him the floor to say a few words. And another special word of thanks. When we talked about the fact that our governments make these empty declarations, and they talk about favoring peace and no occupation, blah, 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 we always have a number of examples. Well, you talk about Cuba, And Cuba, for example, has never had an Israel ambassador because they've never welcomed Israel. So maybe that's a way to do things. So fraternal greetings to Cuba in this regard. And then historians, I think they have a power that even God doesn't have because they can comment on the past. And Venezuela has had an Israeli ambassador, it's true. Comandante Chavez nonetheless expelled the Israeli ambassador in 2008 for the massacre that was being carried out in the Gaza Strip. So here we have the honor to have Claudia Salena, the ambassador of Venezuela, here with us today. She is the Venezuelan ambassador to the European Union, and she is here with us today. Claudio, thank you so much for your support. Now, it's true that over here we're not very well organized, but if we were better organized, I don't think we would be us. I think, but nonetheless, I hope that this conference on the role of women in the Palestinian popular struggle offers its full support to the Venezuelan government in the imperialist aggression that it is facing today. I would like to ask you for your vote of confidence that I am going to express this sentiment that you are communicating to me well in words. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, has spoken about the conditions that people experience in Gaza. An excellent declaration came forth from him. But we don't just want declarations. We want real measures to be implemented. We want something to happen, something that obliges this criminal entity to lift this block against the Gaza Strip. So we are going to reach out to organizations who would like to have specific information. We can send you some more information by email. But if we want this conference to be a starting point, and if we want to actually reach out to the Secretary General of the United Nations, then I would like an applause to hear if you agree. Looks like the case is yes. And now, without further ado, I would like to hand over to our dear colleague Ahed Tamimi so she can tell us a little more about the resistance in Nabi Saleh. Over to you.
أول شيء بشرفني أكون معكم.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here this evening. You really have motivated us. You really helped us drive forward in our struggle. With all the words that can be said, I'd like to say that you really are helping us to convey this, and you appreciate the struggle of the Palestinian people. You're working with us. You're helping us to liberate Palestine from Israel. I'm very proud to be here with Leila Khaled, the most important symbol of the Palestinian revolution, and really represents Palestinian women and shows us how women at all stages of the Palestinian struggle have been able to be an example of what can be done. Over the years, it's been difficult for us, for women, to show this suffering we've been going through. We're suffering day after day after day. we need to overcome our own fears because we really are in an extremely difficult situation. Now, I'm from Palestine myself, and believe me when I say the situation is almost unimaginable. It's extremely, extremely difficult. Can you really understand everything that's going on in Palestine? It's difficult when you're so far away to understand the day-to-day problems that we faced. Now, I've come here to try and explain to you what the situation is and to remind you of the situation that we live in. Now, the reason is you have a responsibility for the Palestinian people. We're paying the price for the Holocaust which took place in Europe, and that's having a negative repercussions on us in our lives. So I think that you have a responsibility to not just help us, but also to show solidarity and to demand with all authorities that the Palestinian struggle should be seen as a humanitarian struggle, and it's incumbent on everyone in the world to find a solution. The struggle in Palestine is not just a struggle between two peoples. In the media, we always see comments which say that we don't respect the Jews, we don't respect the Jewish state, but we're not fighting against the Jews. We're fighting Zionism. We're fighting Zionism, which is trying to impose things on us through the media. We have nothing against the Jewish people. We have a problem with racism. We have a problem with the Zionism, the racism we're faced with on a daily basis. The Zionism is pushing the Palestinian people into the abyss. We suffer from Zionism. Furthermore, the Zionism is also affecting the Jewish people themselves. It's affecting those Jewish people who show solidarity with the Palestinian cause. These Jewish people are also victims of Zionism. I firmly believe that our people are a noble people, that our people are fighting for freedom, and we should not be merely a victim. All of this suffering, all the suffering that we're going through, needs to become a situation where our people can show their dignity and can impose, they can overcome and free themselves from the occupation that we're faced with. Now, as you are all well aware, Israel, geographically speaking, occupies areas which belong to Palestine. It occupies areas that is Palestinian territory. There are, it occupies territory completely, utterly illegal. That's why we call it an occupation. Now, Israel knows what occupation, what lands we're talking about. Now, a month ago, I travelled to South Africa. While there, I learnt a lot while I was seeing what had happened in the past. Israel is trying to impose its system, is trying to impose racial hostility, trying to impose racism, is trying to impose the racial and religious struggle in a similar manner as was seen in South Africa in the past. We need to look at how we can end this occupation. In South Africa, we saw that the native inhabitants were able to free themselves. They were able to overcome this oppression, despite the fact that they didn't, in theory, have the necessary resources to do so. They're a very good example for Palestine, and Palestine could do the same. in general terms, Palestinian women have a very important role in the Palestinian struggle. Women are the core of society. Normally, they have to bring up the children and convey the values to the children. Now, if they do so, then if they convey the importance of the Palestinian struggle, then they can pass this on to the next generations, and maybe this will be the key to helping us to overcome the occupation. There are many symbols of many Palestinian women who resist, who oppose. We have Leila, Khaled. We appreciate all of these women because they show the perseverance, the resistance, this commitment to the cause, and they are fantastic examples for women in Palestine. Now, I didn't want to go on at great length, but what I do want to say is that I would like to leave this room today. I'd like to leave you with one clear idea, and that is that the world needs to recognize the Palestinian cause. The Palestinian people are protecting their own right to exist. The Israeli occupation is something that is illegitimate. The occupation is, as the name suggests, occupying many parts of Palestinian territories. There's been building of houses, there's been land occupied, there's been settlements built, and this is something that we need to put an end to. 68% of the western strip are now occupied by settlers, and this is a significant problem. We need to distinguish between the Israeli occupation and the Israeli state. That's what some people say, but what we try to do is to try to oppose all forms of occupation. It's not just the walls, it's not just the settlements, it's the whole system of occupation that's been imposed on us. We continue to try and change the Palestinian mentality. We want Palestinians to have a mentality of achievement, of winning, so that we can overcome this this Zionist mentality that a lot of people know about. There's a lot that we could all do to support the Palestinian cause. We could we could have a more important role in the Palestinian cause. In Palestine, we say that behind every man there's always a woman, but it's not just a woman who's behind the man. The women are symbols of the Palestinian resistance. Women are seen as strong. And if the women are seen as strong, then the struggle will be seen as strong. We don't want your pity. What I want to do is try and highlight these issues and really convey a very important message to all of you. Please support us, show us your solidarity. Thank you very much.
Bueno, es muy elegante hablando, es muy elegante.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very elegant issue about who is behind, who's at the front. And people say behind every great man there's a surprised woman as well. I would ask you to I'll ask you to help me out here, because when I met her, it wasn't her, it was something else as well. So I'd like to hand over to Franci now, who is the director of Adamir, in addition to being the lawyer for Khaled Gerard. Adamir, for I think a lot of you will already know it, those of you who are involved. Those of you who don't know what Adamir is, you can say it's the most important reference organisation when we talk about Palestinian prisoners. If you want to know how many Palestinians are currently being held, how many of the split between age groups, where, how many MPs are split by sex, conditions they're being held in, how many are in administrative detention, you need to go to Adamir. They have all the information. There's just no question about that. Thanks to their work and thanks to women such as thanks to a number of people, they do a significant amount of work for us, and it's an honour to have her here with us today. Thank you.
مساء الخير وشكرا جزيلا لمانو ولكل حدا شارك.
Good afternoon, or good evening, and thank you to everyone. Thank you to the organisers. It's a very proud moment for me to be here, to be sat between Ahed and Leila, the younger and the elder generation, different generations of Palestinian women. These are generations who have fought and will continue to fight, and I think that new upcoming generations will free Palestinian territories. And I'm here as a director of Adamir, but also as a lawyer. I chose to work in human rights, and wasn't just on a whim. I studied in an Israeli university, and I studied in Hebrew. I studied in a university in one of the occupied territories. And so the logic was, I now want to use that against, I want to use what I learnt in those universities against the occupying power. That's how I chose human rights as the area I wanted to work in. I think we've lost Hamid Bashuni, who was a very significant human rights defender. They were working at an international level with the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, to defend the rights of Palestinian people. Now, the question is, why did I decide to try and work and support Palestinian prisoners? Well, people have been working to ensure that people have the right to a fair trial, wherever the court that may be. I think everyone who has legal recourse will understand that International Criminal Court has been created by the more powerful countries in the world, and been created to maintain the hegemony of the more powerful countries. I've studied, I don't know how many UN resolutions and all resolutions from UN agencies, resolutions that were linked to the Palestinian people. However, we're still seeing more building, more settlements, more political prisoners, more oppression of the Palestinian people. So today we now have an occupying power that wants to control all aspects of our lives, the aspects of our daily lives. And how can we change this balance of power. We need to be that change. We need to bring that change. No one else is going to do it for us, and you need to be committed to that as well. And that's why I'm here with you today. I'm here with you to say to you, to reiterate, with your support, we can pressure those governments who have one rule for one and one rule for another. They can issue an arrest warrants against President Bashir from Sudan, but they can't emit an arrest warrant for Netanyahu or others in Israel. What we want to see is that governments change the way they see the situation. We want to see governments change the way they act when with these criminal acts. These are international crimes. We still have hope. Now, despite the problems that we go through on a daily basis as the Palestinian people, we still have hope, and we still think there will be a new generation who will free itself from occupation. Today, I'd like to focus on a very important issue. That's persecution of Palestinian people from the point of view of prisons policy. Now, this Zionist policy, this policy from the Israeli state, is a systematic policy to have a long-term impact on the future of a people. Let's look at the figures. There's no Palestinian household that hasn't felt the wrath of this Israeli policy. Since 1948 up to the present day, there's thousands and thousands of households of people have been affected. Now, some people after 33 years in prison were then kidnapped once again and were then sentenced to life imprisonment. There's 6,200 Palestinian prisoners. Of those people, there are 65 Palestinian women, and 5 of them are being held under administrative detention. Now, Khaled is one of them, Sabat Farin another. There are 12 members of the Palestinian Legislative Council who are currently suffering from arbitrary detention or administrative detention. Over 450 prisoners are being held under administrative detention. That includes a member of parliament. A member of parliament wasn't able to see the birth of their child. Their partner was expelled from Palestine. People can't see their partners. They can't visit people when they're in prison. So I'd like to focus on this issue of administrative detention. If we talk about administrative detention, then we need to ask for the release of Khaled and other Palestinian political prisoners. Now, you probably know that administrative detention is detention when there is no charge against the individual concerned. What I want to do is to ask the members of the European Parliament and the members of European governments to pressure, or to try and pressure, the Zionist government of Israel so that they free these prisoners. No, if people being held without any charge should be freed. Khaled Gerard is being held under house arrest. She did not accept being held under house arrest, so she was then placed into a prison. There was no charge brought against her. There was no specific crime she was accused of. Khaled rejected the being held under house arrest. So then, after rejecting that, she lost her liberty. She was taken to an Israeli jail for 14 months, and this was under the administrative detention regime. Then she was brought to a court-martial from the occupying power. Now, this court-martial can provide no legal guarantees at all. That's something you need to understand. Over the past 50 years, Palestinians have been tried by court-martials with no legal guarantees. They don't have the most basic legal guarantees of legal process. The United Nations still has not said anything about this fact. So, after 14 months in an Israeli prison, Khaled was freed. She was freed for 12 months, and then she was imprisoned once again. It was exactly 12 months later. She was put back in prison. Then she was sentenced to 3 months further detention. It's clear what's going on. We don't need to set out what the role of Khaled was. I think everyone knows it. It's had a very important role at a social level, and also in the women's committees and in society in general. She's also had a very significant impact in a struggle for the role of women and to have her own freedom as well. During the last period of her imprisonment, Khaled undertook a hunger strike. Finally, she was forced to eat. So I ask you, please pressure your governments. Please write them letters to members of parliament. Ask them to pressure. During our last campaign, there were over 45,000 messages of solidarity for Ahmed Datanish, the Palestinian writer. Now, these 45,000 messages finally led to his release. So I'll repeat that once again. Please pressure, all of you, please pressure your members of parliament, pressure your governments so that we can see all Palestinian prisoners freed, all the Palestinian prisoners who are being held unfairly. There's also a very famous case of a minor, a child who is being held. There's also Salah al-Safadi. There are people who are being held who are exercising their right to representation via a registered association, Adamir, the association I represent. We were working on the case, and we have seen 2 people placed in prison. This is an attempt to shut our organisation up, and we need to help them. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Sahar.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome 3 colleagues who are here with us now, 3 MEPs from different. Martina Anderson from Sinn Féin. Martina was also a political prisoner for 11 years. Up until recently, she has been leading the EU-Palestine delegation. Lydia Senra from Galicia.
Y el compañero Taki.
I'd also like to welcome Takis. It must have a surname as well, but I don't know how you pronounce it. I have no idea.
Un compañero de Chipre.
Takis is a colleague from Cyprus who's also been helping, struggling against the Turkish occupation, trying to fight against the huge democrat that is President Erdogan.
Quiero deciros que ahí tenéis unas camisetas.
There's also some very nice T-shirts on sale at the front here for €10. So, you know, if you've got some money that's burning a hole in your pocket, please do head over. The €10 for a wonderful T-shirt over the front here. Leila, Khaled.
يعجز لساني عن الشكر.
I think my words are not enough to express my gratitude to everyone who has organized this event. I would also like to thank all my Palestinian friends who are here today with us. They are all here showing their support. In spite of the nationality that they might have, that's something quite important, because the Palestinian identity is not just an identity, it's a resistance in itself. I would also like to thank all of you. This is a very warm welcome, and it has really made me feel that I have a major responsibility. All of us have a real responsibility, and all our people have to continue in spite of any sort of difficulty that we might face, and we have to fight on. Throughout my life, as others have said as well, I have been fighting for freedom, because freedom is not something that you can divide, that you can compartmentalize, because in the whole world, freedom is one single concept for every human being. Therefore, when someone asked me to talk about the role of women in this event, I was a little surprised, actually, because those who spoke before me talked about politics, and I said, well, women and politics don't always go together. These are things that are often kept separate. I, in fact, shed a few tears listening to Ahed and Sahar. And why did a tear come to my eye? This is because I've seen that there is a way forward. There have been colleagues along this path, this resistance, and it looks like this path is going to go on with the next generation, and this next generation is going to bring us victory. As long as we have progressive lawyers that take on the challenge and stand up to this fascist Nazi court, military courts, the Zionist, racist courts. As long as we have these lawyers, we have no fear of being detained or arrested, because we have lawyers to represent us, to defend us. A woman gives life, and as a result is the one who is most capable of defending life, because she is the one who gives birth. She makes sure that humanity can continue to exist. Therefore, I'm very proud to be a woman, and I'm very proud to be here with colleagues, with the free people of the world, my brothers and sisters, and that we are all putting up a united front against oppression. There is no price, there is no condition that would make us say that we are the ones who will free men from their patriarchal or misogynistic points of view. We are the ones who need to free ourselves. In fact, it's not just women, men and women, both of us have to free ourselves from this train of thought. And therefore, our fight to free our country is also a fight to elevate the social level, the social consciousness that is required in a society to bring about the changes in light of the circumstances that we are facing, to ensure that we can all cooperate with each other. If we want to ensure that our societies are conscious, that we don't fight against the hopes and aspirations of our people, this means only one thing. We have to continue to fight to achieve a level where we do not allow a lesser degree of freedom, a lesser degree of humanity to anyone. We do not allow any rights to be withheld by the Zionist state. We are here today in a parliament that is made up of the people of Europe. It brings together the governments, the people of Europe, something that unites Europe. The unity of Europe has been a historic event after a number of ethnic and religious conflicts. However, after many years, they have come to a situation where people can live in peace, and Europe is therefore an example for us. What Europe and the countries of Europe have been able to achieve is an example for us. These people obviously are showing a greater degree of solidarity with others, but we cannot forget history. We have to remember that Europe, and not its people, in fact some of its rulers fired the first shot for 2 world wars that claimed millions of lives. These Europeans, in fact, are the people who have suffered the most in these world wars. And in these situations, the people of Europe, after these world wars, were in charge of changing things. There were tens of thousands of victims, and it was up to the people of Europe to develop a new consciousness in the continent. As a result of this, a number of organizations have been born. But today, we now have some sections that are more racist than the Nazis themselves. The Zionist movement, in fact, has followed the pattern to the key. It has even collaborated with German Nazis to detain Jews that were not in favor of their plans. Thus, the Zionist state themselves have arrested a number of Jews, they have imprisoned them, they have used practices that the Nazis themselves have come up with. And these are not just accusations, this is reality. The Zionist state, post the Second World War, has said that Jews are the ones who are being persecuted. But of these 50,000 people, they were not just Jews. You know exactly what I am saying here. These were people who were persecuted by the Nazis, and the Zionists in a way have appropriated this role of the victim. They have presented themselves as victims, always saying that as though Christianity has never suffered. In France, the resistance, for example, or in many other countries, often Christianity was the resistance. The Soviet Union, for example, they also suffered Nazi persecution, and the Zionists have appropriated this role of the victim solely for themselves. The Zionists, furthermore, are allied with imperialism. They have appropriated the entire world, and they have said that the Holocaust is only a pain to the Jews, and there's no other kind of pain in the world. They have in fact appropriated, monopolized this pain, and they have in a way made this role as a victim theirs and theirs alone. Don't you think that what happened in Auschwitz during the Holocaust is also a Holocaust comparable to what is happening in Gaza today? the Nazis have been judged by the world in Nuremberg. However, up until to this date, no Zionists have been tried for anything.
إذن المطلوب أن
So what we have to do is clear. Bring war criminals to justice. Bring them to trial. Try these people who are playing with the lives of people, who are violating human rights, are denying human rights as they see fit, killing people, detaining people, deporting people, marginalizing people, preventing them from work, preventing resistance. And what does this mean? This means that this movement is a movement that is not legitimate in any case. That is what they're trying to say. So we are here facing a project that's not just something local, but it's global. We have to remind the G33 of the Zionist movement. At 4 different occasions, the Zionists have celebrated 100 years of the creation of the Zionist movement. In 1997, they held a special conference where they celebrated the 100 years of the Zionist movement. They also celebrated the 80-year anniversary of the Balfour Agreement. This is something that in fact gave birth to the Zionist movement and the permission to create a Jewish state in Palestine. They also celebrated the 50 years of the establishment of the Jewish state in Palestine and the 30-year anniversary of the unification of Jerusalem as the eternal capital of the Jews, not only in Israel but in the whole world. And this is the Zionist movement. The Zionist movement has celebrated 100 years, and we can break it up into 10-year periods. And the only criticism that has been presented at such conferences is that the setup of the Zionist state was set up only a few months after when it should have been set up. This was the only criticism that was raised in these different conferences. I tried to look for resolutions with respect to this, and I found one on pluralism within the Jews. And at the moment, in fact, there is no clear definition of who are the Jews. From our point of view, who are the Jews? Well, the Jews are the people who believe in a certain religion, etc., a specific group. But there is no specific definition as to who is a Jew. So there is a degree of controversy within the Israeli society with respect to this definition, those who are religious, those who are secular, those who are Jews, who are not. So it's an identity crisis in a way. But in any case, at the end of this report that in fact pointed to this pluralism, there is just one mention, in fact, where it says that in this conference there were some voices who began to question whether there will be a state for the Palestinians, and the answer from the conference was a very clear no in capital letters. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Zionist movement. These interests align with all the capitalists in the world. That you have American imperialism, you have European imperialism, who are at the forefront, which are leading many European governments today. And this alliance means that the people of Israel, the Israelis, can exert real violence when their interests are under threat. Frankly, things are very opaque and very dark at the moment, and if this is where we remain, things would be a disaster. But at this point, I would definitely like to say that in the history of humanity, injustice has never been perpetuated and continued, and it will never continue. It is impossible for injustice to continue forever. And why is this so? The first revolution began by Spartacus in Rome. This was a slave revolution against the governors, and slaves were considered slaves not because of the color of their skin, but also ideologically. The word slave meant that these people had no brain, and the only thing they could do was one thing, that is obey their masters. If their masters wanted them to kill, they would kill. They were basically, they belonged to their masters. And this was the concept of a slave. And this is what the Zionist state wants to go. That's what they want to make us. They want to make us slaves, people without a mind of their own. Why do they want to do this? Well, because the Zionist movement has decided in their Congress number 33 that in the next 100 years will be a period in which they will be able to dominate the world economy. This is something that they have decided. They have 10-year goals, specific objectives they want to achieve, and they have already been able to achieve a lot. They have not used the classic mechanisms, but in fact it's a more implicit strategy. We can talk about political sciences, politics, we can talk about many things. But I would like to come to a point, something that threatens all of us, all of our countries, all of our people, all of our children. Today, in the world, there are millions of children dying of hunger, billions of children in Yemen who are dying every second all over the world because of wars against injustice. And the world is falling apart. In Yemen, we are seeing a real disaster, but the media doesn't talk about this. Radio, TV, newspapers. In the West, nothing is being said about the rights of the people of Yemen and what they are suffering today. The United States sells billions of dollars worth of arms to Saudi Arabia. They even invaded Iraq because basically what they wanted was to get rid of these so-called weapons of mass destruction that clearly did not exist. That was proven. And this is imperialism. This are the people who cooperate with the Zionist movement. Maybe you say, well, let's go to war. Should we go to war? That's a question. But no, ladies and gentlemen. War is not the answer. People do not go to war. They resist because resistance is not the same. Resistance is the password, is the secret to freedom. So what is happening in our part of the world? We come from a part of the world that is seeing war after war after war, occupations on land territory that is ours. And I'm going to be very frank here. There cannot be peace while there is even one Zionist on the Palestinian territory. Today, we have had a martyr. Today, the Zionist forces have shot at them and we have had a martyr. And we want the Zionist forces to feel threatened. They are the ones attacking us, attacking our women, and we want to put up a front against them and show them that they are threatened. In all of you, in the European Union, I see that some of us say that we are terrorists. Well, I would say no. That's not possible. The European Union has to be clear about one thing. These lists that say that the resistance is a terrorist group, that they call us terrorists, well, I see you as friends. I come to you as a friend, and I come here to say that we are all fighting for freedom, and in no way are we terrorists, irrespective of the fact that we might be included in certain lists. All we are freedom fighters. We can say that, or some say that our martyrs are terrorists, but Sahar, as she said earlier, and Ahed as well, they have clearly seen how the martyrs of our people are anything but terrorists. We are crying, we are suffering, we are facing oppression, and we do not want to identify with capitalists. No, because these are our enemies. We do not want to be sensitive to Zionists. We do not want to align with those in the White House. We want to listen to people who are like us. We are people who love life. We are people who love peace. And when Netanyahu violates all our rights, deprives us of our rights, one thing is very clear, that justice is key, because there is no peace without justice. All of us have to talk about justice. Sahar said, talked about international law. Well, who writes it? Who implements it? Well, those in power. Post the Second World War, they are the ones who have created the international legal system. But we cannot bow down to this oppression. Our intention and the intentions of our colleagues, our comrades, our brothers and sisters, our children have one and one aspiration, and that is freedom. Why are these people in prison? Why are they in administrative detention? Why are they facing life sentences? I, in fact, have a colleague who is in prison, Dr. Wahed Sahar. He is a comrade. All he did was unfurl a flag, and they started persecuting him. Why did they do this? This is because the Zionist state believes that everyone who talks about them, who are against imperialism, are their enemies. So I think we do need to do something. At one point in my life, I said, well, how are we going to oppose this? Well, let's just hijack a plane. I'll be very frank. I saw that was the only way out. In the past, those were the circumstances, and circumstances pushed me to take this step. I saw it as the only way out. I thought, well, if I hijack a plane, everyone will be looking at me. And then within this logic of resistance, in that specific moment, we thought of these sort of actions. But this is the past. This was done for one single cause and to achieve what we wanted, and that is freeing prisoners. That was our objective, so that everyone would realize what our fight actually was. We wanted the world to cooperate with us. For example, the UNRW, all the organizations that work with refugees, everyone who provides us tents, sends us clothes. Well, I've often seen used clothes that are sent to us, and this is not something that matters to me, because it reminds me, it shows me that I'm a poor person, and I have no issues in saying that. Why should it be a problem that I'm poor? But in fact, what is important is the life of a refugee. And that has what has happened to us. This is someone who has been deported within their own country. This is a person who has been forced to live in a camp, and this person is receiving these used clothes. Well, okay, fine. What is important here is for the world to cooperate, for them to show their solidarity with the Palestinian cause. However, the Palestinian cause, first and foremost, is land. This land is being occupied, and who controls land? The people, and these people unfortunately have to seek refuge. This is the way to solve this issue. Without liberating our land, we cannot have peace. Not just for us, not for them either, not for anyone. peace is impossible without the liberation of our territory and our lands. Therefore, in these circumstances, one thing is clear. The world needs to see how things are moving ahead. And I was talking to Manuel a little earlier, and I was saying that our governments need to do something. And he said the same thing, that you need to reach out to your governments. You need to undertake some action to pressure your governments to take some action. If they continue to think that the Palestinian resistance is terrorist, how will they ever do anything? Why would they do anything? A few days ago, there was a European Parliament delegation visiting Palestine, and they basically told the Zionist soldiers told the delegation, go back to where you came from. And this is something that needs to be discussed. So now the European Parliament is talking about ending cooperation with Israel. And this is something that should lead to a resolution where you end cooperation with the Zionists as long as Palestinians are forced to live in camps. Stop cooperation with the Zionists, and if you manage this, bravo, is what I would say. Stop all cooperation between the European Union and the State of Israel. Let's go a little beyond our situation, though. We are in the 21st century, and we listen to people saying Allahu Akbar, and they self-immolate after that. And the world says, oh, this is what Islam is. Oh, let's get these Muslims out. Oh, they're so backward, they're terrorists, etc. And frankly, who is actually projecting this image? Who has created Al-Qaeda? Who has been behind all of this? Saudi Arabia, in fact, had paid billions to Osama bin Laden, provided technical assistance. Who actually destroyed Iraq? And Iraq, as you all know, is suffering a civil war. Syria, that's another example. This is a country that wasn't complying with what the US wanted, and therefore the US decided, well, we need to get rid of them. They entered Syria, they got all the mercenaries, all the well-trained criminals, the well-equipped mercenaries of the world in Syria, and all the Gulf countries with their oil money is now funding this war in Syria. And what has happened now? There is no democracy in the Gulf countries. There is no democracy in Syria either. He is a dictator. He needs to be overthrown. This is what is being said. The United States is trying to be a global police, and they are deciding who is democratic and who is not. However, when the Zionists attack us, when tanks run through the West Bank and Palestinian cities, nobody there asks why this is happening. Nobody says, oh, now the Zionist state is not being democratic. In fact, on the other hand, they say, oh, well, Assad in Syria, we need to get rid of him because he is undemocratic. So thus you can see that there are double standards here. Who talks about the Syrian revolution? Nobody, they're saying it's a people's revolution. That is not true. What you have here is a conflict based on religion, a sectarian conflict. And why are we talking about this so much? Because there is a plan. There is a preconceived, systematic plan, something that has been being developed since the 70s to dismantle everything to, in a way, justify the Jewish state of Israel. And all of this is being done for one single goal, to justify the Israel state. They say that, oh, there the Shias are there, the Sunnis are there, the Kurds are there, and they're trying to basically incite sectarian conflicts. Why? Well, to create instability in the region, and everything then plays into the hands of Israel. So people then think, well, all of this is happening in Palestine, it's happening in all of these countries, all of these different wars, and therefore we have to continue with the existence of the Jewish state. But in fact, the territory that we are in, and if we want to achieve peace in this region, then we have to do things differently. In Venezuela, for example, you have a people who is against its leaders. Or rather, we have people who are standing up for their leaders, and imperialism is attacking Venezuela. Also, this so-called threat of weapons of mass destruction led to the destruction of an entire country. Now we're talking about North Korea, but Israel has hundreds of nuclear warheads. Venezuela has no nuclear warheads, but they are being attacked as well. They want to help subjugated peoples, they want to help oppressed people, and therefore Venezuela is constantly being attacked. In fact, they are facing a military threat as well. However, the Venezuelan people is much greater than all of this. This is because they have a spirit where they are capable of defending themselves, and I am sure that Venezuela is going to overcome imperialism. I am fully convinced, because they are a very dedicated people. Therefore, I would like to say that all popular movements, all people's movements that resist oppression, in the sense that we know it, in the way that we suffer, then all we can do is unite the people of the world to defend the cause of freedom and to defend women who are the source of life. And we women are the ones who defend life with our own lives if need be. This is the only way that we can ensure that the generation that comes after us can live in freedom and in humanity. Thank you very much.
Bueno, a los que os quedéis con...
Well, if you would like to, Leila is going to be in Madrid for the Communist Party a meeting on the 8th and Saturday, which is a meeting called Existing is Resisting. Existir es resistir. Sorry, from 6 in the afternoon till 8. It's not at 8, it's from 6 till 8. We're also going to present a book that's been written by our colleague Jorge. Again, it's called Existir es resistir. It's a collective work. It's a fantastic piece of work. Well, Leila really has spoken about so many things, and one of the things she mentioned is how the delegation, how the MEPs that went to visit have been treated. So we're going to bring together another delegation. I can say Javi Coso will be there. If there's anyone else, any colleagues, whether they're Irish or from wherever else, you are more than welcome to join us. Any MEPs, MPs, from either from Spain or from other countries as well, please do join us and come be part of this delegation. Now, there's a point that was mentioned about, what does it mean to be Jewish? And I remember there's in the past people used to say there's a negation of what it is to be Jewish. The Jewish people. Well, if I'm from an atheist people, I'm from the atheist state, am I? And it really it was helped us to understand. And Michel Colon helped to understand this, and we've got him here with us today. So please put your hands together for Michel Colon.
Gracias. Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sharing your ideas of hope and support for all people around the world. This creates a major responsibility on those of us who are in this room. How can we help you to overcome this final act of colonialism in the world? It's obviously going to be difficult because we're looking at the most important economic and strategic interest in the Middle East, oil and economic dominance of the world, and it also continues the system we have now. We're talking about strategic and economic war, and that we need to camouflage ourselves with what I call normally the five principles of war propaganda. Firstly, hide economic interests. Secondly, hide history. Nakba is taboo in this country and in Europe as well. People just can't talk about it. The third principle, demonization of the enemy. By that I mean they strip the humanity out of the Palestinian people. The fourth principle, the investments made by the aggressor. And the fifth principle is monopolizing the debate, so not allowing people to listen to the two sides of the story and decide for themselves and decide what the real position is. These are five very important principles. So when we think about what we can do to help those people who are resisting, the normal answer is BDS, boycott. And the question that follows on from that, how can we increase the pressure of the BDS campaign? How can we make sure that it's not just those of us who are already convinced and committed to it? How can we get more people involved? I think the battle for information is vital. There's a counter-attack against these five principles. Firstly, explain economic interests. Secondly, explain history, and thirdly, fight demonization of the Palestinian people. I'd like to insist on these points. The demonization of the Palestinian people is something I'd really like to insist on. I think we need a decisive project to help us counterattack. I have a proposal. I think we should organize a Palestinian newspaper, a weekly newspaper or a journal with videos of people in Palestine. And people can tell the stories of an aspect of their life or about a recent crime which has been committed. And it'll be a very modern way of doing so. And we can say, yes, there's a vast array of initiatives which are fantastic, but we need more. We need a decisive weapon in the battle on social media. Every week we can have a video in a number of different languages, well translated, a humane message, so that we can really explain and help convey the reality of the occupation. In that, the role of women will again be absolutely vital. We need to explain people's daily lives, the crimes, so that we can fight this demonization of the Palestinian people. We also need coordinated mass dissemination of this message in these videos through all groups. I think this is something that could be a decisive weapon for us. Nevertheless, it involves a lot of work. Starting it is very easy, but maintaining it effectively will require a lot of effort. It will need a team, an editing team behind it. There's a lot of work to do so that we can make it professional quality. I think it's a specific proposal. If there's anyone in the room who is interested, then please, we can coordinate with ourselves, with Marta here to my left, so that we can shoulder our responsibility and be more effective in the fight against misinformation and the fight for greater solidarity with the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Michelle. Also, Martina Anderson would like to say a few words. Member of the European Parliament from Sinn Féin. Please go ahead.
Friends, comrades, women of struggle, Sinn Féin in Ireland has a very long and proud history of international solidarity with the Palestinian people and with your struggle. And we share a common experience. Just as you have experienced occupation, repression, discrimination, so have we. And I think there's a common cause. On Monday, the 2nd of November, marks 100 years from the Balfour Declaration. And who was at the heart of that? The British government. And just as the British government inflicted that onto your country, they too have inflicted partition, occupation, and all that ensued in my country, in Ireland. Had anyone told me when I was in prison in England and then in Ireland serving life that I would be sitting here representing my country, coming from the largest Irish delegation in the European Parliament, Sinn Féin, and that I would have topped the poll in the north of Ireland, I would have thought that they were on drugs. I would not have believed it was possible. And I say this to you, and I recognise that you have someone else here in this audience who has served over 20 years in prison, that we in Ireland made the impossible possible. And so will you. Whilst you do not have the support of many of the right-wing governments across Europe, you do have the support of millions of people who have stood shoulder to shoulder with you on the streets. We in this Parliament, we have protested inside the Parliament, outside the Parliament. We have called for the suspension of the association agreement, and we are also driving forward in Ireland support for BDS. I don't know if this translates well, but in Ireland we say your purse is power and your wallet is your weapon. So in supporting BDS, I think I agree with the previous speaker, we need to be strategic. We need to hit them where it hurts. And we need to be doing that in a way that people get information so that they know what to purchase and what not to purchase. There is so much that I would like to say to you here. I was the chair of the Palestinian delegation up until recently, and it was the proudest honour that I have had to represent Palestine in the European Parliament. And we continue in our group in GUI NGL. We've travelled in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016 and 2017 to Palestine, and they refuse us access into Gaza. But I want you to know, despite the double standards, despite the way they speak out of both sides of their mouth, that you have people here who care and who will not give up until you get the just freedom that you deserve. So I just want to thank you all for coming to this Parliament, because it does our heart good having you here. Thank you.
Bueno, la compañera
Martina herself was a political prisoner for 11 years, similar to Rafat, who was a political prisoner for 20 years. And Khaled Harar, Hitan, Ahmed Sada, Samri Sanwi, Maran Marguti, and many others are being held as political prisoners, and you won't see them on the news. But who you do hear about as a political prisoner is a fascist. You see some of them on the news every day. There's some who have been responsible for 43 murders, and they still get on the news. Now, there's a campaign in our media, tainting our media, trying to push their message. It's an important issue for the Venezuelan people. Now we have the ambassador of Venezuela to the European Union, who is going to say a few words. I don't know if you're aware, but please, you have the floor, madam. Thank you. It's a real honour to be able to speak to you and speak to the Palestinian people in front of those women who have been driving this cause forward. Now, I am the daughter of a woman who was a journalist and has always supported the Palestinian cause and has done for many, many years, and so something that I've been aware of for many years since I've been a child. We've been disseminating in the Venezuelan media information around Palestinian struggle for a long time. We didn't know a great deal about it. I think everyone here admires you, and that comes from the bottom of our heart. And for the Bolivarian Revolution, you have been an example for us. Our Commander Chavez always said that the Palestinian struggle was ours as well, and we said that he always said to us, be more Palestinian than Venezuelan. But really listening to what you said, I've spoken about your cause on numerous occasions and in the United Nations and elsewhere, and we continue to fight for you, and our last breath will be there for you. Now, Venezuela holds the annual presidency of the non-aligned movement, and we're bringing together the we decided with all the other representatives that the Palestinian cause was going to be the main issue that we will focus on. So throughout that presidency, it is our key issue. Now, in a meeting recently in New York, there are a number of conclusions which were drawn from it, and it's the first one one of the key issues was justice. All of those who are responsible for crimes are brought to justice. There should be international trials against those who are responsible for the massacre of the Palestinian people. Venezuela is known in the United Nations for fighting with Israel. We fight in any way possible. We're famous for doing so because when we chaired the UN Security Council, the same year that there was a resolution, there was only 2 countries that voted against it, one in the Security Council and another country that had to say what they said. Our presidency turned to the Security Council and said to the representative of Israel who was there was that Venezuela denounces before the world that Israel has tried to lead the ultimate and final war against Palestine. Now, the representative of Israel and the US representative were furious. They asked for Ban Ki-moon to ask Venezuela to apologise, and we will never apologise. They're still waiting for that.
El NOAL tomó la decisión también,
the non-aligned movement have decided also that 2017 had to be the year for the end of the Israeli occupation. Now we're coming towards the end of 2017 and we're still trying to achieve what we set out to try and do. I'd like to share 2 personal experiences with you. I've been working in the UN from my office, and I was there in 2012. We applauded the entrance of Palestine as an observer observer state in the UN. And I saw my colleague bringing the Palestinian representatives to their place, and I was very, very proud of what we were doing on that day. Now, I'm sharing that with you because I'm very proud to be, I'm moved by being here with you today. Now, second thing I'd like to share with you is before coming here to work as ambassador for the European Union, because it's been difficult because they don't like us that much here. I was the lead negotiator for the climate change. I was there in Copenhagen for the discussions that didn't come out too well. The Paris Accord became very famous in 2015. Francois Hollande and everyone could clap their hands, and it was a fantastic show for everyone to watch. And so there's something else that happened on that day that no one talks about. Now, I was drawing up the preamble to the text with the former French foreign minister, and I wrote in the preamble among the different conditions, human rights, etc., I put gender equality, and I put intergenerational equality, and also as I was writing it, I had to put mention of occupied territories in there. Now, I didn't know someone will go through that with a fine tooth comb, and at the end of the day, someone saw it, and they saw my reference to occupied territories, and the final plenary was halted for almost 4 hours because they had to, who put this in? How are we going to take it out? Well, what we did with the agreement of the Palestinian delegation, we changed it so that we said we want Palestine to come in. We want Palestine to come in as a full part of the agreement, as State 197 of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, things can happen late at night. So while people were applauding the signature of the climate change agreement, I was there with the Palestinian representative hugging, because no one had noticed. You are now State 197 of the UN Framework on Climate Change.
Como nos encanta pelear.
Now, we're known to enjoy a bit of a fight, but only for just causes, and we defend ourselves as well. We don't attack anyone, but we'll defend ourselves, and we'll defend a just cause when it needs to be done. So we went to speak to the presidency of the Decolonization Committee in the UN, and we said, look, the key issue is right now in the two fora, the international fora that you're going to organise. We're chairing them. Venezuela is chairing them. We're going to focus on the Palestinian cause. Now, our revolution until its very last breath, which, you know, and our revolution will continue in Venezuela, which will be handed down from generation to generation. We want to see a fully recognised state of Palestine, and I believe that those of us who are here today, we will be intransigent and continue fighting for that in our space, in our forum. We have the capacity to fight, and we will never give up until our last breath. We will always support you in your struggle.
Gracias, Claudia.
Thank you, Claudia. In Gaza, we say Palestine, Venezuela, two peoples, one heart. Now, Claudia, you'll see in the CP event as well. Now, it was supposed to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Che Guevara. It still is, but now we're trying to make it. We're trying to open up the issues slightly more, so we can include Venezuela in there as well, because Venezuela is the most directly threatened state right now. But you'll be able to see her on Sunday as well, says the speaker. Leila as well will be there in the science faculty of the Complutense University on the 2nd of October, I believe. After that thing that's going on in Catalonia, I'm not sure what that is. On this Monday the 2nd, she'll be in the science faculty of the 5:30 in the afternoon. There'll be the official presentation of things there. So now we're going to. I don't know how much time we have left. In fact, we've got until 9 o'clock. We've got 25 minutes. Now I'll hand over to Tede first, because you've been asking for the floor for a couple of weeks already. And please be concise, and everyone can think we don't need to go through everything. Please, if we can be brief so that everyone can have the chance to take the floor.
Bueno, yo no he oído.
Now I've heard a lot here, and of course I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Palestinian people. I'm not going to talk on behalf of politicians either. I'm not a politician. But as a woman, see, yes, I have to say one thing very clearly. Europe needs to ask itself something. Many European countries talk about looking back at history, etc. And how many European countries are taking a defensive stance against Mossad and its relation with Israel? One thing is clear, that Mossad is killing his own people. They are someone who are showing all the cards, while Israel is holding their hand very close to the chest. So it is time for Europe to act. So when Mossad soldiers come here, let's see who receives them over here.
¿Es este? ¿Estamos? Bueno.
Please use the microphone when you speak.
Bueno, mi nombre es Sol Sánchez.
My name is Sol Sanchez, and I'm a speaker from Izquierda Unida in Madrid. So, firstly, on behalf of my party, I would like to greet everyone here. This is a party that has always aligned greatly with the Palestinian cause in terms of international policy. It's one of our key points. And I would also like to congratulate the organizers for this event. I would especially like to thank them for having brought 3 women here. The Palestinian cause can be represented in many different ways, but I think these key ideas of defending life, of raising awareness, of talking about freedom and putting life at the center of all of this are very feminist ideas. These are very much part of the feminist discourse. And that is why I think that it's important to have events of this kind, because it breaks down stereotypes, very negative stereotypes, when it comes to the Palestinian cause and how it's defended in certain fora. I also wanted to encourage you, within what might be possible, to draw up a campaign to really highlight the feminist cause in imprisonment, because I think it's very important here to break down false stereotypes that are spread very easily at the moment because of a lack of information, because people don't know much about Palestine or life there. So I think people say that, well, people in Palestine are misogynistic, but well, misogyny is well and alive in Spain as well. Many women are killed at the hand of misogynists. So I think that we need to create awareness. For example, in Spain, we're talking about feminizing politics and that women should be treated in a different way and they would take on conflicts in a different way. And I think that this is something that would be very positive for Palestine as well, from a very feminist perspective, explaining the work that women are doing in their communities in Palestine. And I think this would help to really break down a number of false and wrong ideas, and would also present a new perspective to continue to fight for your cause. That's it from my end. Thank you very much for being here today, and I hope that this will just be the first of many such events to come. Thank you.
Bueno, buenas noches ya.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Fidel Romero. I'm a mayor from a very small municipality in Andalusia of just 4,200 inhabitants. Now, one thing I think is very important, and whenever women are part of a resistance, we will triumph, because they see life in a very different way, and I think this is very important. What we have learned from our Palestinian colleagues has been very clear. I think we need to defend this everywhere, irrespective of how small our town might be, our people might be. We have to promote the idea of BDS. And in my municipality, we were in fact the first people in the world to adopt the idea of BDS. And this is thanks to the incredible vision of my colleague Belen, who in fact presented everything that the Palestinian people are suffering, and in this way we were able to convince all political groups to unanimously vote in favor of BDS. But immediately from the mayor's office, there was an immediate boycott of all goods and services coming from Israel. This was sent to all the companies that are providers for the Andalusian government and the municipal government there. And we said that everything that came from Israel, this is something that the municipality of Rhoda and Andalusia would return these products. And this is something that a municipality of about 4,000 people did. Because we, at the local government level, we are states in our own right. We have a small little piece, small little corner where we have some degree of power, and we have to continue to fight for just causes, even on our small scale. And the cause of the Palestinian people is one of the most just causes in this world. We have to help them, and we have to see that they can succeed. So I encourage all people, all representatives of government, use whatever power you might have, big or small, to fight as you can. We need to change things, but if we want to fight against something that is so unjust, these capitalist laws that are just squashing us, if they want us to kneel down, we are not going to kneel. We are going to continue to be firm in our fight in favor of the Palestinian people, and we are going to continue with this fight till the very end.
Muchas gracias, Fidel.
Thank you very much, Fidel.
Y un abrazo a Belén. Sí, espérate. Sí, tú estabas después Pierre.
Well, Fidel, then Ibrahim, then we have the movement of the Palestinian diaspora, the women's movement.
Sí, tú. No, va la compañera detrás.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to express how much I'm proud as a woman to meet my examples on this land. A year ago, I met Mrs. Leila Khaled in Jordan, and she told me one of my wishes is to be in Brussels. So I would like to thank all the people who made not only her wish, but our wish also possible. I am a doctor. I am one of the founders of the Palestinian community in Belgium. And going back to this point, I would like to let you know how much we have been disappointed when we had our case in 2001 against Ariel Sharon. As Mrs. Leila said, I am born in Syria. I'm coming just back from the conflict, and I know how this country was corrupted to change their law, while we are facing all what we are facing in Syria to change Bashar al-Assad. I have two questions briefly. We keep on going, we keep on working, but I would like to tell you honestly, we don't feel that what we do is making a very big difference in Palestine. We need your advice, responsibility. How could we really go on in the West? Second, I would like to tell you, I am from that generation, and my father is a struggler, my grandfather is a martyr. We have been born with this, that we need to get back Palestine from the river to the sea. However, here I am under the pressure to be civilized and to accept the two-state solutions, and we don't know how to deal with that. Thanks.
Sorry for my Spanish, I shall speak in English better. I belong to an association called the French Jewish Union for Peace. We are clearly anti-Zionist. We know what happens in Palestine, occupations, crimes of war, crimes against humanity, apartheid. We know that Zionism is racism. And we were in Gaza last year. We presented ourselves like members of the French Jewish Union for Peace. Everybody told us we are not against Jews, we are against apartheid, we are against occupation, clearly. Our association is clearly for BDS. It's very important. We think that the leaders of Europe are complices of Israel because Israel is their state. We, belonging to Western countries, we have to force our governments to change. It's very important. And I shall say thank you very much, Leila, Khaled, for what you said about Zionism and for what you say that it's not only a crime against Palestinians, it's a crime also against Jews, and that many leaders of Zionism were collaborators during the Second World War. You have to know that Yitzhak Shamir, who was during 7 years Prime Minister of Israel, not only was a terrorist against Palestinians, he killed British soldiers until 1944. He was a collaborator. Thanks a lot.
Microphone for the speaker, please. Microphone for the speaker.
Intenta no extenderte mucho.
Please be brief, Ibrahim, because obviously we only have interpretation till 9 o'clock. Please, if you could keep it to 1 minute, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Good evening. Good evening. As a Palestinian, I would like to thank everyone for all the efforts and the dedication that has gone into this. Thank you to the two MEPs for all of your efforts. It's not the first time I've been to a meeting of this type in this Parliament. To see you working in favour of Palestine. Thank you to Manu, our big brother. Does so much for our cause. I wanted to say the following. In many meetings, conversations or conferences, after explaining what has happened and what the Palestinian people are suffering from, they say, what's the step? How do we solve this? How do we help the Palestinian people? We have a saying in Palestine which says that the last day of the occupation will be the first day of peace. The last day of the occupation will be the first day of peace. And that's how it needs to be. We need to put an end to the occupation, and that will be the first day of peace. And that's the truth. Thank you very much. Microphone for the speaker, please. Microphone for the speaker.
Yo sí voy a ser breve.
I can be brief. I'm a Palestinian. I'd like to use this opportunity to announce the creation of a movement of Palestinian women, which is called Karama, which is the word for dignity. We are women from Valencia, Seville, and other cities in Spain, but we want to grow our association, want to cover the entirety of Spain. I'd like to, my colleagues from Karama, could I ask you to stand up, please, so that we can thank you for creating this movement. We needed to do so. As Sol said, the history of the struggle of Palestinian women is not well known in Spain or in Western Europe at all. We have a member of honour of the Leila, a member of association. We have looked at Sahar, Ahed, and looked at all the other women doing, and seen what you're doing on a daily basis, struggling on a daily basis. Your fight is not visible outside of Palestine. So we want to try and amplify your voices outside of the country. We want to represent Palestinian women so that people know we are diverse, we're secular, we're democratic, we're militants. Some of us are in other movements as well, BDS, the Freedom Flotilla, etc., etc. We're going to continue working with all these different organisations, but we want to insist on the creation of this movement to exist is to resist. So we wanted to amplify, as I said, the voice of those women struggling in Palestine and elsewhere. We do understand the struggle of Palestinian women within Palestine and other Arab countries, but in the Western world, people aren't too aware. So hopefully we can change that, and we can try and represent them to some degree. So can I ask the Karama women to stand up, please? Thank you. Please stand up. So.
Good evening to all. Good evening to all. First of all, I'd like to thank our, not supporter, our part of our resistance, the Spanish, Madame Anderson, the European Parliament, for hosting not only the Palestinian, to host a big example of the Palestinian woman. Comrade Leila Khaled, I know her since 45 years. I grew up in her hand. She teach us. I will continue. She teach us that's where freedom, where are you? They put Israel between me and you. And she teach us that we should continue our struggle. And she teach us that the Zionists and the fascists, they throw us out of Palestine. But she, and I assure you as a Palestinian refugee, they will never take Palestine out of us. Ladies and gentlemen, we the Palestinians, we have over 10 million refugees. We never saw Palestine, and it's not shameful not to see your country. But we still have the hope, and we're still resisting for us to return to Palestine. I want to thank all my comrades, the European comrades, who host our great heroes, great example. Madame Anderson, Madame Adamir, the other girl who host the Palestinian woman, who are a big example of you women, that our Palestinian women teach us two things. First of all, they raise up and they give us a milk from their breast to say, Palestine and Palestine and Palestine. And we will continue. This milk, we give it to our children. Okay. I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you. And we should work together. And we know there is a lot of oppression on you from the Zionist lobby. But we are together in the struggle. Thank you for hosting this great meeting, for hosting our great hero, Comrade Leila Khaled. Thank you so much.
Shukran.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for giving me the last word, and I myself cannot go back home as the Deputy Head of Mission of the State of... Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the Deputy Head of Mission of the State of Palestine to the EU, I cannot go back home without extending my very warm welcome to our hero, المناضلة ليلى خالد في البرلمان الأوروبي, and also to extend my appreciations for the organizers of this event, and to thank the distinguished representative, the ambassador of the State of Venezuela here, for her support, the unconditional support that her country has been giving to us in Palestine. And I would just want to join my voice to my colleagues, Madame Leila, Khaled, Sahar, and Ahed, and to call on the EU, as somebody who has been following the work of the EU for the last 10 years, really to think about its position and to reconsider its positions toward Israel, and to call them, if you cannot suspend the association agreement with Israel, if you cannot impose sanctions on Israel, please stop helping the occupation, because with those relations with Israel, you continue to support Israel and directly support the Israeli occupation. And this is our main message for this audiences to the Europeans. Stop, please, helping the occupation so that the Palestinian people will live free finally after 50 years of occupation and 80 years of deportation and refugees. Thank you very much.
Shukran, shukran. Nos tenemos que ir ya.
We need to finish because it's been difficult to get everyone moving around, and now we need to organise how we're going to have a family photo. We could do it here with the banner, to exist, to demand the freedom of our comrades. We've asked people if we can come to the front. We could do it now or on the stairs, but we want a photo of everyone with the banner calling for the freedom of our brothers and sisters.
No, ya se están levantando, claro.
Bueno, simplemente.
Well, I'd just like to thank speakers Leila, Sahar and Ahed for having conveyed their message to us in this house. I remember the first time I came here, Gaza was being bombed. And I came in and, this seems like a cathedral which has been built to really impress with its side. And I was speaking in the Foreign Affairs Committee whilst the majority of the MEPs were calling for sanctions against Russia. They were trying to push forward a hostile agenda against one of our neighbours. There were over 500 Palestinian boys and girls who were being massacred. And I couldn't hide that. And I said to that meeting, when are we going to ask for sanctions against these war criminals? Everyone likes to shout when it comes to issues with other countries. In the plenary, when we asked for people to condemn the destruction that was ongoing, infrastructure which had been built by the European Union in Gaza, over 400 votes were voted against asking for explanations from Israel about what had been done. And a revolutionary always needs to tell the truth, and it's difficult here because this house is dominated by the Grand Coalition, which supports the Zionist movement. But those MEPs who are here, those from the Communist Party and those from the Izquierda Unida, we do amplify the voice of those struggles because they are our struggles. So thank you for being here and for making this Parliament look good for once. Thank you. Long live Palestine.